Welcome back to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast. One of the hosts still administers the Wonderlick. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes, and I am joined on Combine Week. We are on video now. I mean, you see that we're on video, but you've done this podcast before. It didn't used to be video and audio, so it's now video and audio, just FYI.
Oh, nice.
You guys can check out the links on YouTube. Sorry, that's Mike Renner of PFF, who is in Indianapolis at the Combine. Mike, welcome back to the show.
I would have put on makeup if I knew it was on video. I didn't prepare for this.
You look like you did your hair a little bit, so yeah.
I didn't try.
So Mike, before we get started, so you did me a huge solid, so I'm getting to Indianapolis on Wednesday. We're doing NFL Live there on Thursday and Friday. And I asked you for a list of like the 10 guys who you think are going to have an impactful combine, the ones you want to see at the combine, the ones who are sources of intrigue at the combine. You gave me a fantastic list. Some of them were guys I, are obviously planning on digging into anyways, but there were a couple names there who weren't on my radar, who weren't names we're necessarily going to talk about at NFL Live, but that I'm now extremely excited to talk about. But you've been there, so we're going to get to that. I do want to ask though first, you have been there now, what, 2 days, 1 day?
Like a day. I got here yesterday night.
Okay, that's good, because I feel like more than like 6 days is too much.
I lose my voice every single year because it's a grind.
It's a grind, but then it's also like being at an adult frat party for those who are right. I mean, I don't stay out till like 2 and 3 in my normal Mina Kimes life, but it really is like a lot of socializing, which is like equally draining for people like me. I don't know.
Well, it goes later than 2 or 3 is the wild part. Like I've sometimes not myself, but some years myself, but like 4, 5, 6 a.m. you can be at a bar here and they won't close until everyone leaves. Yes. So it's a wild scene.
It truly is. So I guess the socializing has begun. There's the combine part, which is where we talk about prospects. We see prospects. We're going to talk about that most of the day. But there's also the fact that it is literally like a high school reunion sort of with gossip. And there's always rumors and stories flying around. What would you say outside of, the actual prospects is the thing that people are talking about the most there?
Well, I think it's the number 1 overall pick. There's a reason why you're hearing right now, what it's going to take. There's a lot of interest in the number 1 overall pick. It's because the Bears are trying to drive the price up with their talks this week. Ryan Poles is going to be discussing with other GMs all week long about what it's going to take to get up there. And he basically floated that out into the influencer sphere, the Schefters of the world, and said, hey, drum up that interest. Let it know that it's for sale here. So I think that's the most intriguing aspect of this week so far.
Yeah, and it's really, we have started to talk about this on NFL Live. I talked about it last week with Greg Rosenthal. It's a really fascinating situation for Chicago because of the just surplus of needs on that roster, because of, what their personal evaluation of Justin Fields is and the quarterbacks and all that. And then also this draft, whether or not you want to trade beyond pick 4 or 5. Talked about this with Greg last week. There is a consensus view that there's a couple of defensive players who the Bears would very much like to have on their team, who will be there at 4 or 5, probably won't be there at 7 or 9. So it's hard to talk about, though, because without knowing what the actual trade offers would be, you can't really compare. I said on Live yesterday, I was like, well, if Carolina offers them the mother load versus Indianapolis, yeah, maybe you miss out on Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, but you need the mother load if you're Chicago. So it's very tricky for them right now.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there with like the past pick 4 sort of tipping point, where anyone past pick 4 is the same in your eyes if you're the Chicago Bears. Because if you're past pick 4, that means you're, almost 100% chance you're missing out on Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, who are like the 2 impact blue chip defensive linemen in the draft that they would, if no quarterbacks exist in the draft, they would just go ahead and run the card in at number 1 overall, like we saw, last year. But they're better prospects than anyone we saw in last year's class. And so once you get past that, it's like, it doesn't really matter if it's pick 5, pick 7, pick 9, pick 11, Tennessee Titans. Like it's any of those picks, it doesn't really matter. What you just want is the future first. If you're the Chicago Bears, you just want what could be, what you saw the Broncos, what you saw Gosh, who was the other one? The Rams give up, that future first that could turn into a lottery ticket in the future. Is what I think you're going to be gunning for if you're the Bears.
And it's so hard right now to put valuations on these potential trades because they don't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's not recent precedent for teams trading up to 1 from 4, which is its own unique thing, versus 9. Or last week I talked about the Trey Lance trade, but again, that was to pick 3. It wasn't the first quarterback off the board. It's just, so I think that obviously you're right that that's going to be the subject of much speculation in Indianapolis. The other thing I did want to touch before we get to these picks is Derek Carr is there. Our Diana Rossini reported 3 teams that he's meeting with. The Jets, no surprise, the Saints, no surprise. We knew that the Saints were already in the mix. And then the Panthers, which is not a name that we've yet heard like explicitly linked with Carr. It's not surprising. They're one of the teams that obviously is in the quarterback market. I just want to throw something out to you. I don't love that for Carolina because personally, I think that's a team that should draft a quarterback this year, and I think is a team that should consider trading up for a quarterback. And, Derek Carr to me is not the stopgap solution that like a Jimmy Garoppolo, or if you go further down, a Jacoby Brissett would be. We'll see how much money he gets, but he doesn't seem like the kind of guy, if you're, let's say you draft Anthony Richardson there, which is, we're hearing a little bit of some of that. That doesn't make sense, right? Like you don't sign Derek Carr to start for your team for 1 year. So what do you think about Carolina and Carr?
They're in a weird position though, right? Because if you sign Carr, you're the best team in that division. That is not a strong division by any means. Is I think like what they're maybe getting a little wide-eyed by in this, maybe going and drafting Derek Carr is because it's not a terrible roster by any means, this Carolina Panthers roster. Like they have some good young talent, some cheap talent that like you get a Derek Carr in the fold, you sign some free agents that hit, and all of a sudden you're NFC South champs next year. But are you close to a Super Bowl? That's kind of the debate there. So it's an easy path to a playoff game, but it's also not getting you any closer to really a Lombardi. So that's the trade-off that I think they're going to have to weigh, and why they're probably kicking the tires. But I ultimately think that would be crazy to me if they did sign Derek Carr.
Yeah, I think just don't get blinded by the bad division is how I feel. I mean, I like teams that stay competitive, and I think that it would immediately, you're right, it would make them the favorite to win the division. But like nobody's would look at that team and think deep playoff run. And I also feel like the way they've gone about things this offseason, the coaching staff they put in place, the fact that like I feel like the timeline just aligns with a young quarterback. It's a young ascendant team. I don't know. That's where I'm at with Carolina. The Jets and the Saints both make more sense to me. I'm sure more teams will throw their hats into the ring, though.
And if you hire a Frank Reich because you think he can develop a young quarterback, right? Like you're hiring him on the basis that whoever the young guy we bring in, he's going to mold into the guy, quote unquote. So Derek Carr just doesn't make sense from that standpoint then.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Speaking of young quarterbacks. So the first 2 names you gave me were 2 quarterbacks. Again, the premise here is like just guys you were intrigued by at the combine in particular.
Yes.
So we're talking about them with an eye to like things they might show us or not show us at the combine that could affect their draft stock and perception. We should start with the presumed number 1 overall pick at the moment, although it is very early, and that is, of course, Alabama's Bryce Young. Bryce Young is not throwing. No, okay, whatever. Yeah. I mean, like I don't think anyone really cares. We all know why he's here and what we're here to see, which is, of course, evidence that the photograph of me and Bryce Young that circulated on the internet was terribly misleading, that I am not as tall as him. I am 5'7". I'm not trying to make this about me, but the world is going to finally see how tall Bryce Young really is. And perhaps more importantly, you can tell me what you think, how much he weighs.
Yeah, I think that's actually the more important thing, is the weight. Like the height, he's not big. He's not tall. Like what if it's 6 foot, if it's 5'11", if it's 5'10", is there a difference between those? Not in my eyes. I don't think not in NFL evaluator's eyes. But I do think like the frame and how much weight can he actually put on is a big thing, because is he going to come here and like no matter what his weight is, you can probably subtract 5 pounds from him chugging water prior to it, because he knows he knows he has to come in with a good weight, so he's going to do whatever he can to show up as heavy as possible, but also like how much can his frame put on at the next level, or is he going to be like 195 his entire collegiate career, or excuse me, NFL career? Because that's a weight that's probably going to scare teams off. If he comes here and listed at 194 during the season, if he only, again, with all that water weight, gets into the still in the 190s, it's like he may just not be able to put it on, because it's not like he has any excuse from the high school or college he went to in terms of the strength and conditioning programs there, not being able to put on weight. So he may just be a thin frame dude that you're just going to have to live with.
What is the historical precedent for a sub 200-pound quarterback?
So the last sub 200-pound quarterback to take a snap in the NFL was Seneca Wallace back in 2012 or 2013, the Green Bay Packers. And obviously,
how slight he was.
Was not a, he was 5'11", so a very similar size, truthfully. 5'11", 193, I believe he was listed at. So that's like your last guy to even play at that size. I think historically, going back, the one that he kind of frame-wise reminds me of that had some success was like a Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon was definitely on like the thinner side, played a little outside the pocket, took some hits, and obviously had some nasty injuries and is paying the price later on in his life for them. But that's kind of, there's not a lot of historical precedents in terms of like actual franchise, long-term, highly successful quarterback. So some teams just aren't going to take that risk. But again, all it takes is one at the top of the draft.
Yeah, I had a chance to kind of dig back into the quarterbacks. I haven't gotten to Hendon Hooker yet, but I'd already watched a lot of Bryce Young. Obviously, we all have, just because of playing for Alabama. But just watching him, I was just struggling to find flaws other than the size. It's a really like 30,000-foot view. I'm going to do more podcasts, guys, where I'm going to do a whole one digging into the first-round quarterbacks and their positives and negatives. So this is pretty top level. But I actually on my rewatch, when I went back into the film, came away more impressed. Maybe it was, I didn't watch him first. I watched him after the other quarterbacks. So I kind of went in the order, and he's just so polished relatively as a processor, the anticipatory throws, the accuracy, the decision-making. One thing I did post about a little bit was, and this is pertinent to his size, I actually found his vision over the middle of the field, and particularly like the short intermediate middle, which is an area that short quarterbacks sometimes struggle with, pretty impressive. Like in a way that was a little bit more, I would put him closer to Drew Brees than Russell Wilson on the can he see the middle of the field scale. I mean, I guess I'll just kind of pitch that to you. Like, did you feel like size concerns? And don't get me wrong, there are games where it shows up where interior pressure is a problem. I'll point to LSU being one where there's a few times. Granted, oh my God, that pass rusher on LSU. Holy Harold Perkins? Whatever.
Yes.
Oh my God. Sorry. Aside. Did you feel like his size showed up on tape?
I think in certain ways, and it's more like ways that he had to deal with it. So if you just watch him compared to, I guess, the rest of the quarterbacks in the class, like he'll set deeper in the pocket. He gets to about 9 yards pretty consistently. Whereas NFL quarterbacks, it's 7 to 8 is like the sweet spot. You don't want to get deeper than that. It's something Kyler Murray does too, just like to give you that better vision, better able to kind of see that, just at a better angle to see it. So does that, they're not running a ton of quick game with him where it's like, one step, get the ball out. It's just, he's probably not going to be super effective on those sort of things. So it's more like how he worked around it. But I mean, go look in, I'm going to plug the PFF draft guide here, but they have heat maps of where he targeted, most of his passes. And there's a big red in the middle of the field, 10 to 20 yards. He targets the middle of the field more than the average college quarterback. Like he works that area at a better rate, better in my opinion, than any of the other quarterbacks in this draft class, which is just, again, something you don't say about Russell Wilson, something you don't say about Kyler Murray. Is a rarity for God's sakes, but something like Drew Brees could do. So it's a different, I guess, style that he's playing compared to the, what even Baker Mayfield was, like a lot of the 6-footers and under have been. So, like you said, not a lot of flaws in his game. It's more just things you have to work around. But then at that point, the highs are so high. And then the fact that he did it against competition level he did against that Georgia defense last year he did it against, that was the best defense, in probably like 20 years in college football. yeah, you just have to tip your cap to the guy and say he's an outlier.
The other thing is it's so jarring. So my experience watching college football is usually the end of the year, just aside from, playoffs and some of the big games, just like kind of catching up. And every year it was such a jarring experience watching this Alabama offense versus the previous 3 years plus, because it's like guys just aren't wide open and he's under pressure and it's very disorienting. It's a totally different experience as wide receiver. Like he is throwing guys open and those throws in the middle of the field, he is leading them to get yards after the catch. It's the level of difficulty was so much higher for him than Mac Jones and Tua, and it's I'm sure that's something that's going to be factored into consideration as well.
Yeah, and like statistically, it didn't look the same. It's not going to ever look the same when you don't have Jameson Williams, John Metchie, 2 top 50 picks at wide receiver. You lose to, and it's just going to look different. So, but the PFF grade was damn near the same. Like the performance level that he's still played at with that, all the talent going on around him makes you feel really good about it. Almost makes you feel better about his projection in the NFL having this year still playing at a high level when he doesn't have, a first rounder at pretty much every position on the football field around him.
I wonder if, we talk a lot about how offensive coordinators in the NFL have adapted. A lot of stuff's come from college over the last 10 years. They've gotten better at designing offenses for mobile quarterbacks. I wonder if they've gotten better with height or I wonder, in the same way that like now there's more value on a dual threat quarterback. I wonder if there's a more openness to, because you talked about the fact that they're going to have to, like, you have to call a specific offense for this size quarterback. I was thinking about that because I don't know if you saw, there were some interesting comments. I don't know if it was Gannon himself who talked about putting Kyler Murray under center more. Did you see that?
I did not.
It was kind of a rare admission from a coach with like a nod to scheme. Kyler Murray's not been under center. There's some advantages with, play action. Obviously, you saw that with Russell Wilson earlier in his career. I wonder if the NFL, I guess, or certain teams are better suited for a Bryce Young than maybe before Russell Wilson entered the league.
Well, I think you just look at things, like you said, play action there, just the rates nowadays compared to previously. And that's obviously kind of a whole bunch of concepts off of play action that don't really, that move the pocket, that you're not really, the height doesn't come nearly as much of a factor when you are utilizing play action at a heavy degree. So I do think there's a number of just kind of schematic evolutions as a whole that the NFL has all adopted that have taken away the, 7-step drop, got a, 1 to 2 to 3. That's not how the quarterback position's played anymore. You don't need that vision that, to be able to see every single thing on the football field to be successful.
So the other quarterback you chose is the most polarizing prospect in the draft, is how he's currently being advertised. That's Anthony Richardson, who he will be the most talked about quarterback, I think. Let's just start here at the combine. He's doing everything, right? Like, what are you excited to see or interested in seeing from Richardson?
All of it. I mean, now, truthfully, it's not going to change the eval much either way, but I just want to know how freaky this guy is, because on tape, he looks, right up there with any of the top athletes we've seen come out the quarterback position, whether it's Josh Allen, whether it's Cam Newton, all the way back to Dante Culpeppers of the world. He's in that realm of just pure super freak that I just want to see. Like, the video came out yesterday of him doing a between the legs dunk, and he's like 6'3". It's like the guy is, and he's 240. Like, it doesn't make sense. He like breaks brains on tape. I just want to see, like, put actual numbers to how insane this dude is. But again, it doesn't really matter. Like, all this on tape, but it's just going to be fun to kind of analyze him in the annals of, high-end athletes.
Do you think it will? So he's throwing. Do you think it could potentially hurt his draft stock or perceptions or whatever if, on the shorter and intermediate stuff, he looks inaccurate? His footwork still looks a little weird. I'm not a mechanics expert, so I'm like uncomfortable diagnosing exactly what's wrong with his footwork. But sometimes, even to me, it's clearly insane. I love him as a prospect. And the fact that he, by the way, does stuff in spite of that is a testament to, I think, his arm talent, like his ability to make those off-platform throws. But like, if he comes out and does the throws and it looks a little weird and he's like missing guys on slants, like, do you think that could potentially cause some consternation?
I don't think it will drop him down any boards, because everyone knows that's like all he's working on, right? Like everyone who's watched his tape agrees that's like the issue. It would be crazy to me if whatever quarterback coach he's working with isn't harping that day in, day out. So everyone knows that he's in the process of rebuilding that or improving that. So I don't think it's going to be horrible for his draft stock if he does. I see it more so on the other end that he can jump up board. He can get to that or near the top spot if he is. Yes, exactly. If he's showing improvement already after a couple months of like true work on just that and really looks better. So if he is erratic, everyone's just going to be like, well, that's the guy who saw on tape. It's going to take a while. If he isn't erratic, people are going to be like, oof, okay, this guy's, different now. Like, he can actually be something in the league. So I think that's how I see it. It's like he can raise it, but if he's erratic, everyone's just going to be like, yeah, that's the guy.
I think he's also a guy who could benefit from the interviews. So I'm not really like dialed into this stuff, but Laura Rutledge is very dialed into Florida, covers the SEC, and was saying on our show that, the people there really rave about his work ethic and his intelligence. And, he's raw, but he's like committed to getting better. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, I don't know it shows up on tape. Like when I watch him, the errors, or I guess the inconsistent accuracy, and but the mistakes sometimes, it doesn't strike me like you see a guy who's like trying to stay in the pocket and step up and push the ball downfield. Sometimes it's just his accuracy is all over the place, but you can kind of see him like learning to play the position. And I do wonder if maybe being there talking to teams, they'll come away impressed with that effort. And he's inexperienced, but he's trying to get better and is getting better.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing that, kind of the difference between him and maybe a guy like Malik Willis last year, who was billed in a similar way of just like, oh, he's got all the tools, is that Malik Willis.
He was out of there. He was out of that pocket.
Exactly. Malik Willis is like, something went a little wrong, something was a little off, left tackle's getting worked back a little. It's all on me now. Like, and Richardson would stick with, the offense. He's like, okay, this is going bad. Well, then let me work back to this side. And work this side of the field. So I do think you see that, which is like, that's a necessary skill. That's what Josh Allen did still at Wyoming, even if he was trying to throw the ball through a barn door every single time he threw it. Like, he still had that ability that not a lot of guys have. Like, it's a rarity, and that's why I think you're seeing so many guys high on Richardson this year.
How do you feel about that comp? Because obviously that's one we're going to hear a lot. We're going to hear it all week. We're going to hear it every day between now and April. Like, do you think it holds up?
I don't think it's great for a few reasons. One, I think like Josh Allen didn't actually get coached. Like, he on tape at Wyoming, like he looks like just he almost looked like a baseball pitcher is how I hearkened it way back when. It was like, he looked like he was just trying to throw the ball hard and to like a point. Like, whereas Richardson is already more developed than Josh Allen was, but I think it's a little worrisome then that like the accuracy is kind of still at the same point. So I don't think you're going to see this massive leap in accuracy from Richardson the way you saw from Allen. I think you'd see improvement, but I also think like he does so many other things well that you don't have to be a pinpoint. Like, you don't have to look like Drew Brees to succeed at the quarterback position in the NFL today in terms of accuracy. Like, you can get by with some spotty accuracy as long as you are bringing the high end plays to the table. And Richardson for sure brings those high end plays to the table.
He throws, I would say, with more touch downfield than I think that I remember Allen throwing, not just in college, but in his first 2 years in the NFL. Some of them just gorgeous throws on tape. And then some where you're like, I don't know what the plan was there. I don't know what you were doing. He's an exciting player. All right. You put 2 wide receivers on this list who are very, very different. Let's start with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. This is intriguing because, well, first you can tell me, what is he doing? Do we know anything?
I don't know yet exactly what he's going to be testing. I assume he will be, though. It's either now or pre-draft. Like, he'd be crazy. I don't know if he'd be crazy not to, but it's just like, you got to run, because everyone's question is like speed with him. Ask anyone there, that is the worry. Is like, is he fast? Is he not just a slot? And so, if obviously he had the hamstring issue that kept him out all last year, but like, if that persists and then you don't test either time, it's not only just then the speed aspect that people are going to question. It's like, how bad is his hamstring? Is he ever going to if he didn't test either here or at the pro day,
Right.
it's like, is it that bad that he can't even
Was it
play?
serious or was it like,
Yeah, or is
I
it
don't
like
need to play
I'm
this
a
year?
first rounder
Yeah,
already,
yeah.
hamstring? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is he? Do you feel like a no doubt first rounder? Is that the sense you're getting?
Well, like I said, if he doesn't test at all, I would be surprised if he
Yeah.
was. But he's more of a like, you have to have a slot role in your offense to really even think about drafting him in the first round. So he's going to be like, spots are going to be very, like, landing spot is going to be very important for a guy like Jaxon Smith-Njigba, or very like necessary when it comes to like actual draft day of who's going to pick him. It's not just like, oh, I need a receiver, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, slot, put him in. It's like, no, you kind of have to have a plan and a role for him if he isn't going to be or ever be like a vertical threat in your offense, which I'd be surprised based on his tape at Ohio State if he is like an outside vertical threat, Tyler Lockett type at that kind of size. I just don't see it. So he's going to be a slot, but he's so darn good at that I think we've seen with success of Cooper Kupp, the success of Amon-Ra St. Brown, that putting that guy in that role can be very, very beneficial and can pay up big dividends for an offense worth a first round pick.
He was an interesting one to watch because there's no like, wow, like there are highlights, and you know he's a great route runner. He has such a good knack for finding the soft spot and zone. He can beat man. He's got good hands. He's clearly very smart. He can do everything like well, but there's not like that wow factor. But he's probably going to put together I could also totally see him finishing top 10 or 15 in yards and being incredibly productive in the NFL and being so useful in a good offense. And that makes him a little bit hard for me to, I guess, project where he should go in the draft.
Yeah, he's difficult to like rank amongst the wide receivers because he's different in that regard. Like there's no one play you point to where it's like, oh, that was it. It's more like you have to watch 20 of his routes, know that like on those 20 routes there was no slip ups, no lackadaisical route running, no like and you get kind of the beauty of Jaxon Smith-Njigba, that he's just like as crisp and as polished as you can be for a guy with maybe kind of average physical ability.
He's just very reliable. I've seen the St. Brown comp, and like teams would kill for an Amon-Ra St. Brown like that. Most teams would love that. So that's going to be a fascinating, I think, situation is going to be really important there. And like you said, just haven't seen this guy play a lot of football lately and seen him run, and we don't know the injury status. So I have to think that's pretty important as well. Quentin Johnston is like on the opposite, like literally polar opposites at wide receiver. He looks like an avatar out there, like the Navi, like that. Literally, it is a watching him in the open field with the ball in his hands is shocking. No. Like it is. Wow. So I guess we should start at the combine. I mean, he's got to be one of those guys who everyone is expecting to just blow people away.
Yeah, that's it. So Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I think like actually, his is more, I'm highlighting him because I'm like, what is he actually going to be? He can like improve his stock by testing well. But Quentin Johnston, it's like, this dude better test out the gym, or else what did I just watch on tape?
Yeah.
Like, because for 6'4", 215, I've wanted to float Julio Jones's name out there for like comps for him, but like you can't do that. Exactly right. You can't do that. But like just watching him on tape,
Julio Jones. But if he was wearing like gloves where you like all your fingers are fused together, like those like winter snow gloves, I swear to God, I don't know if he can catch. I don't know.
He does not. He attacks the ball well in the air, and then that ball just like clangs off of his hands. I don't know what it is. So maybe his hand size is what we should all be looking for. Does he have like Kenny Pickett's there?
I don't know what it is.
But
it's not even just the drops, though. I hear you about him attacking it, but then sometimes he looks like, how I forgot who tweeted this. Someone made a joke about how Chase Claypool looks like he's being attacked by the ball every time someone throws it to him. Sometimes Quentin Johnston looks like that too. Like the ball's coming, he's like, whoa, like it. I mean, he catches it with his body. Whatever. I'll just say what it is. What it is. Like, and can you take a guy like that? Can you take a wide receiver with bad hands first. He might be the first wide receiver taken because of his size and his traits. Am I being too harsh? Tell me if I'm being too harsh.
No, I don't think you are. He might be like, I usually trend away from those type of guys. Like, I think that was Christian Watson last year to a big degree, coming out of North Dakota State, where it's just like the hands were a problem. And you kind of saw it as a rookie, but it's just like, man, he's so freaky that it ended up, obviously it's year one, but like when it was hot, when it was good, it was as high end as it gets. Like he looked nasty when he actually got the ball in his hands in space, whatnot. So I think that's kind of the bucket I'd put Quentin Johnston in. But obviously, like, he's 2 years younger and obviously already more productive. But he's so freaky that I think he's just going to figure it out, even if it's just like getting some scheme touches, ball in his hand. Like he is. Yeah. He's like Jamar Chase plus 3 inches and 15 pounds. Just like that's kind of the way he looks with the ball in his hands. It's a real special athlete. So excited just to see what caliber, like how high end this guy really is.
Yeah, that's another one where I think fit is going to be paramount if he can be eased into an offense that way, where it's kind of schemed out for him. Yeah. He's so, like I said, when he gets the ball in his hands, it's insane.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen big receiver
that's
like that elusive since we started doing this 2014 Green College.
The movement skills.
He just makes guys miss at 6'4". That just doesn't happen really.
God. There was one play I saved a bunch of clips because the tacklers just slip off of him. It's wild, and at that size, the way he moves, it is really hard to comp. But it is.
That's why I wanted to say Julio, just because of the pure physically reminds me of Julio. Now Julio's a different animal in terms of his ball skills and just like is a little bigger, a little stronger, but the ability to like get off the line of scrimmage, the ability to just like be that sudden at that size is not something you see every day.
That's a good point. Let's talk about one more offensive player before taking a break. As a running back, amongst the running backs, you chose a guy that I would not have watched if not for this, so I'm grateful to you, and that is Keaton Mitchell out of ECU. He is 5'9" and 180 pounds. I don't know if that's the latest, so I guess we should start there. I assume he's on your list because is he the guy who people think will be the fastest running backs?
He should be amongst there. So him and Devin Achane, the Texas A&M back, who was like a verified track star at Texas A&M. I think he went like 10-1-8 or something in the 100 meter, who's also like 185. They're going to be neck and neck because I think Keaton Mitchell's GPS times were actually faster at ECU than Achane's. But obviously, you're splitting hairs when you're getting into the 4.2s about how fast guys are. But he on tape, the reason I brought him up is because usually guys who run 4.2 or low 4.3, like they are straight line. And it's why a lot of those guys fail. It's because that's all they have is just that direction. Yeah. But you watch him on tape and some of the juke moves this guy can pull off it's unique. It's unique for a guy with that much speed. So I guess I'm just excited more to see, obviously the 40 is going to be nuts. But then is his shuttle nuts too? Is his 3-cone going to be nuts too? And how much is he going to weigh? Because again, 180 pounds, looks small, but obviously James Cook at some point was listed at 180 at Georgia and gained enough weight to go in the second round for the Bills. So can he put on more weight? Does he have the frame too? Because he's only a true junior coming out, but he's a guy that I'm just excited to hope he goes to a spot that is going to utilize him in some way, shape, or form, because he is an athlete, even if it's like moving him to wide receiver, seeing what he can do with the ball in his hands, because they're just a unique and special athlete in my opinion. So that absolutely, this is his time to shine.
Yeah, he's another guy who's so slippery when you watch him, and part of the reason he is pretty efficient as a runner is guys just don't get hands on him. Now, when they do get hands on him, it's a different story, but he's so good at finding daylight and is a legitimate threat to house it on any given play. I don't know if he can be the NFL projection is a little tricky. I think watching, obviously competition also factors into that as well, but I gotta think there's a team out there who will look at those traits and maybe think Tariq Cohen as a floor, maybe, which is a lot of teams could use a Tariq Cohen as a floor type guy.
And I think there's becoming more of a role or that's become more of a role in offense. Teams
Yeah.
are looking more towards, and I think especially teams that run option runs, because of just the nature of option runs. Like, you're not, the offensive line rarely, like defensive linemen don't penetrate upfield against option runs. That's how you like get exposed. So it's a lot of, you get space to work, you get that head of steam to work with. And so you're seeing like Boston Scotts of the world, like play roles in offenses, like really undersized backs that 10, 15 years ago just would have been out of the NFL by now. So I'm excited to see kind of the genesis. How far does that go? Like how many guys in that mold are we going to see over the next handful of years really like make impacts or actually get chances to carry the rock 5 to 10 times a game?
We're not like talking about, but there's so many little tiny wide receivers too who are so intriguing and so fast and so elusive. And, you know, I mean, like a guy, I love Tank Dell, but I watch him and I don't know, man, like it's a new world. It's a new league in a lot of ways. Rules are changing, football's changing. I think that's a little bit of a theme here, but then you start entering historical territory and you start to worry a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like every year now it's like we are getting the smallest at a number of positions. And I don't think it's like, I don't think that's just a coincidence. You know, I think that's the trend. Yeah. That's the way college is going, and kind of the NFL has been lagging behind till the degree, and that's going to be the way NFL is going to start to go.
Love it. Small people representation. All right, let's take a quick break, come back, and talk about mostly defense, but some other guys too.
Building the perfect same-game parlay can be time-consuming, but with Quick Picks, the Caesars Sportsbook app does the work for you. Quick Picks are pre-built same-game parlays that turn today's biggest headlines, storylines, and games into bets. They're quick and easy to use, and you can't miss them. They're right on the home screen of your Caesars Sportsbook app. Give them a try, and if you haven't downloaded the app yet, register using code OMAHAFULL, and then place your first bet. If you win, congrats. If you don't, you'll get your stake up to $1,250 back as a bet credit.
That's the sound of another sale on Shopify, and the moment another business dream becomes a reality. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're selling dog toys or jewelry, Shopify simplifies selling online and in person so you can focus on successfully growing your business. Shopify covers every sales channel, from an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform. It even lets you sell across social media marketplaces like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Packed with industry-leading tools ready to ignite your growth, Shopify gives you complete control over your business and your brand without having to learn any new skills in design or code. And thanks to 24/7 help and an extensive business course library, Shopify is there to support your success every step of the way. What's incredible about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify is there to empower you with the confidence and control to revolutionize your business and take it to the next level. Now it's your turn to get serious about selling and try Shopify today. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Mina, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Mina to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/Mina. Union Pacific Railroad wants you to join its team. It's an opportunity that comes with great pay and benefits. There are a variety of open roles across its 23-state network, including train crew positions, with hiring and relocation incentives of up to $50,000 in some locations. You can even get a free college education while working. Union Pacific Railroad connects hundreds of communities hauling goods that Americans rely on every day. Get your career on the right track with Union Pacific and apply today at up.jobs/sports. That's up.jobs/sports. Okay, so Keaton Mitchell's a guy you got me to watch. Another guy that I watched because you, maybe I would have gotten to later, but not this week, is Calijah Kancey out of Pitt. I love him. I enjoyed watching him so much. I also... Well, we should have kept this in the last segment because he is a defensive tackle. He is 6 feet tall and about 280 pounds. Is that where this starts for you?
Yes. I mean, the weight, size, height, length is kind of obviously like, that's probably even more important than how he tests, because like on tape, he's the quickest defensive tackle I've seen since Aaron Donald. And truthfully, this is going to sound blasphemous to say, but like I think he's quicker than Aaron Donald. I truly do think he has more like lateral agility, a little more burst, but he's also smaller. Like Donald coming out of Pitt was yeah, he's like just a shade over 6 foot, but he has long arms for a guy that size and still is like strong, well built. Kancey looks, I mean, he can almost pass. Like I told you, he can pass for a linebacker. The guy is thin framed. I don't think he's ever putting on more weight, but the athlete that guy is incredible to watch. Like he's just so difficult to square up, and his size almost helps him in that regard because there's no strike zone. There's nowhere to get him. Like you almost have to double team that guy. No one gets him cleanly because of that.
We are not comparing him to Aaron Donald. This is not an Aaron Donald comp. However, maybe it's the pit you need. I don't know. But when you watch him, because of the natural leverage advantage he has because of his size, he is a nightmare to stop as a pass rusher. We'll talk about the other aspects of the game in a second.
Yeah.
But as a pass rusher, he's pretty freaking advanced, dude. Like I was watching all the pass rushers together, and there's a lot of guys where you're like, all right, he needs to like develop moves. He's got to put it together. Then you watch this kid Kancey, and he's got the moves, he's got the counters, he's got the effort, he's got both speed and power, and like he just gets after the quarterback. It really feels like it's not like the Bryce thing, but like outside of the size, he really is such a good football player.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned his moves because that to me is like the biggest thing here. There's like the athlete, like there's been a lot of like undersized high end athletes, like Ed Oliver comes to mind as well. That like he is the most advanced pass rusher in this draft class, regardless of position, in my opinion. Like he has
Kancey.
Yes, Kancey is like even more so than Jalen Carter, more so than Will Anderson. Like he's got an NFL ready set of pass rushing moves that he's very good with. I mean, he's the highest pass rushing DT in the country last year, according to our PFF grade. So
really,
so like there's a lot to like, but 6 foot 280 is outlier among outliers. And again, I don't think he's getting much bigger than that. 6 foot 280, and he's not getting to 290. Like that's a cap frame, but I still think
he's probably too small to be like a 4.3 end at that size, right? So you'd need him.
I floated the James Harrison comp out, or just like the James Harrison-ish role maybe for him of that tiny edge rusher that is just it'd be difficult to block at that size. Maybe even like Brandon Graham mold, guys of that nature. I'd be curious to like see some reps of him doing that. Obviously, he didn't do that at Pitt though. So, but it's a possibility. Like if it interior fails, I think he still has that in his arsenal.
I do think, in a 4.3 if he's just given the opportunity to shoot the gap, like because of everything we've been talking about, the size and the moves, and maybe not every down at first, but he's just so impactful as a pass rusher. I don't know. This was one of my favorite watches, honestly, because I knew nothing about him, turned it on, and I see him try like 8 different moves in the like like in a single series, and they're working, and it's so cool. We should acknowledge that I think he also, however, runs the risk of just absolutely getting bullied at the point of attack in the run game at the next level.
Kind of a lot of the same things we said about Young, where it's like you have to protect him in a way. Because of that size. Same thing with Kancey. Like you can't just say, hey, when you get, you're 3-tech, you're between the guard and the tackle. When like you get double teams, you can't just try to drop anchor. You have to like give him the freedom to get around that double team. Not take on, like not let either guy, both guys engage on him. Like you have to afford him that, because or else there's just no chance it's going to end well for him in the NFL. So unique dude.
And maybe that's
I'll take that chance.
Yeah, maybe that's another one where, again, it's like destination. Who's he playing next to? Is he playing next to a real spacer, that who could free him up to do stuff? Just a very fun and special player that, I'm excited to watch as well. The other defensive lineman you had was Myles Murphy out of Clemson, who I had watched some, and I watched a little bit more of. Where is he currently, before we dig into why you're excited about the combine, where is he currently being like mocked?
Like mid-first.
What are you seeing? Mid-first, okay.
Mid-first, yeah.
What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
That's where I have him too, and it's truly because of what's going to happen here in Indy. Like he is he is the edge guy who's going to come here. And, I've comped him to Rashawn Gary, Rashawn Gary at tape in Michigan. You didn't notice him. You noticed Chase Winovich more in more Michigan games than you did Rashawn Gary, but he was 6'5", 275 with 35-inch arms and ran a 4.6. That's going to be Myles Murphy. Like you could watch a whole Clemson game, and I watched him play Notre Dame and do zilch against them. And
that was one of my watches. Yeah.
And that's a good offense tackle. That's an NFL caliber offense tackle. And Joe Alt that he was going against, and he shut him down completely. But it's like you're banking on what he can do with the coaching that, my D-line coach, my coaching, whatever. And 3 years of that. And because when you are that size, as we've seen with Sean Gary's got like one pass rushing move. He goes to a bull rush and then a rip move. And it's like, because he's 6'5", 275, it works. But when you're that size, when you're that freaky, you don't need Myles Murphy to do too much at the NFL level, still make an impact. So I think the big thing for him here is it going to be like, is he high 4.5s guy at that size, or is he like a 4.75 guy at that size, which is a big difference, and big difference in your ability to actually bull rush NFL caliber OTs.
Gary's a good comp because I was watching him. I was thinking he leans on the long arm a lot. Like you said, he's got a great length, and that does remind me a little bit of Gary in college. It really feels like if you combined Myles Murphy and Calijah Kancey, you would make the perfect football player.
Hall of Famer. I mean, that's actually
literally the opposite. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It literally is everything we just said about Kancey. You can literally just flip on his head and talk about this guy. Doesn't have a lot in terms of hands, moves. Very good against the run. Very physical. Plays with great effort. Sets the edge. That'll probably give him a floor, I think, coming into the NFL. The fact that he can do that. And he is explosive. He's agile. The athleticism leaps off the screen, but he just hasn't shown that he can consistently get after the quarterback in the way you'd want for a first round edge rusher.
I think if there is like something in his favor, that this might sound dumb, there might not be anything, but like Brian Brzee was the number one overall recruit. His teammate DT was the number one overall recruit. He didn't develop any pass rushing moves at Clemson either. Like he's in the same boat where after 3 years, they're the same class. Yeah. 3 years, neither of them have done anything. It's like, maybe it's the D-line coach there, like maybe this ain't the same D-line coach that was, Cleveland Ferrell.
Let me ask you this, actually. We're coming off of draft where Javon Walker out of Georgia was, put together an incredible combine. Another guy who the production wasn't really there in college. The athleticism was there. It was a surprise at the time, but as, things went on, it became unsurprising, I guess, that he was the first overall pick. Do you think there might be a trend towards teams thinking, I can fix him, we can develop this guy? I mean, I guess that would be more like Tyree Wilson would probably be the more guy you'd talk about there. But do you think a guy like Myles Murphy could also fall into that category?
I think he does. Now, I think last year, I wouldn't, overreact to one Trayvon Walker, because I think that was more of a product of like who was drafting them one overall. Like, I don't think a GM other than Trent Baalke pulls that trigger there. Like, I think he was the only one who was going to draft Trayvon Walker number one. Like anyone else, like he's the 8th, 9th, 10th overall pick, in my opinion. So I think that was kind of a unique situation. But I do think with you'll see teams willing to take that chance at that position just because of the payoff of what Rashawn Gary's turned into. Is so high end when you have those kind of traits that teams are going to buy into those fairly consistently.
Okay, so your next one is like the craziest one to me because I didn't watch him. I watched some Wisconsin. Did you know I was going to go here with this?
Yes, yeah. I know, yeah.
Okay, so I watched some Wisconsin defense just for other purposes versus some offenses I was watching, but I didn't really have a chance to zero in on this guy. Nick Herbig, Wisconsin. Let me start here. What position does he play?
Off-ball linebacker, and I think I don't think there's any question. I think he's off-ball linebacker, even though he played
not what he
played what he played Wisconsin.
Give the history. Sorry, I should have started there.
So he's 6'2", 228 is what he's listed at Wisconsin. So he's just not a size that even if he gained like 20 pounds, I don't think he's staying on the edge just because the height, length, not quite there. But the movement skills and the pass rushing moves, like he was beating offensive tackles one-on-one at that size fairly consistently, and not just like not like a pure athlete beating him one-on-one. Like he has real pass rushing moves, real coordination that you see consistently. And I think he had a top 5 pass rushing rate each of the last 2 seasons in college football. And then at that size, being undersized. But the thing that really sold me was him in coverage. Like only like 50 or something snaps, but he moves better in terms of like processing route concepts and knowing where to fall off into zone coverage than a guy like Trenton Simpson from Clemson, who has been a linebacker his whole life. Like he's been an off-ball linebacker his whole life. Like, and he had more pass breakups on those 50 coverage snaps, 3 pass breakups on 50 coverage snaps than Trent Simpson had his whole career. So like he's a guy that's very smooth. And why I said a guy I really want to see test here, because on tape, I think he's maybe low 4.6, high 4.5, and like really good, gonna have a really good 3 cone. And just like, I see a high end athlete, I see a good athlete. And that's the case. That's what the top guys in the NFL look like, is those sort of testing numbers. So obviously super raw, but the college game to the NFL game is such a big jump that maybe it's just more that he hasn't learned bad habits of the linebacker position. So obviously Wisconsin's had a few of these guys over the years, whether it's Joe Schobert, who I think you'd call a hit as the outside linebacker to off-ball transition, and Zach Bond, who you'd probably call a miss. But Bond was a little bigger and kind of did much less in coverage than even Schobert or Bond did, or Herbig did in college. But
yeah,
it's a weird transition. But I'm unreasonably high on this guy off of those 50 coverage snaps I saw.
Chenal always played off the ball, right? Leo Chenal. He always.
Oh yes, yeah, he was always off ball,
and
so was Edwards always off ball. Wisconsin's been like linebacker used since Leonard got there.
Really,
yeah,
seriously, man. Wisconsin, wow. Leo Chenal, Super Bowl hero. This is not a good linebacker group, huh? Sorry, I just I haven't like super dug into it, but yeah, it's not jumping out right now.
I think I have him linebacker 3, and he's like a
Just and he's not even played linebacker.
but that's kind of just the nature of how
this makes sense though for like a good team mid-draft. Obviously he's gonna be a special teamer at first, he'll contribute there. You can see it.
But I do think to come out in today's day and age as a junior, like he probably got some sort of good eval from the committee to like come out. So he's not just a pure project like 5th, 6th rounder. Like he may go a little bit higher than that, just because you'd be silly with the NIL money that you get in college to go out early especially with a guy like him who's a tweener already.
Okay, let's transition to talking to one of my favorite guys in the draft, Mike Mayer. Is he only go by Michael? I don't know.
Michael.
Tight end. Notre Dame, tight end class, about as opposite from the linebacker class as you can get. The much ballyhooed tight end class. I love so many of them. I still think he's tight end 1. I've seen a lot of drafts that don't have him there, which has kind of been interesting. I mean, that's a whole other subject. Let's start here. I suspect you have him here because the only real question mark is how fast he is.
Yes. It's been the question since his freshman year, sophomore year. What's he going to run? Like, what is he? And to say that and why it's so important is because just look at the tight end landscape in the NFL. Who are the guys who go for over 1,000 yards? They run low 4.6 or faster. Every single one. Without fail. It is a position that to produce, with stats that look like a wide receiver, you better run and move like a wide receiver. So is he that? On tape, I didn't think he was, but he was also 265. On tape, like he's in the Rob Gronkowski realm of size for the tight end position. So can he trim down to 255 and maybe has that in him still? So I guess I'm just excited to see where he comes in athletically, because just on tape, he's like as complete a tight end prospect as I've scouted. And for saying that about true juniors, wild, because a lot of times tight ends are seniors or redshirt seniors coming out just by nature of the position. So yeah, he's about as safe a pick as you'll see in this draft.
He's not fast, and the Gronk thing is kind of funny because the baby Gronk is what they called him in college, and he has that kind of same like Tin Man quality sometimes where it looks a little bit like he needs to be oiled, but it doesn't really matter on tape. I'd watched him a lot, over the years because he played so long. And I guess when I was rewatching him, I came away with, I didn't have my mind changed because I already liked him, but I felt like he was a better receiver, complete receiver than perhaps, I don't know, maybe he's given credit for. I don't really know what the perception is at the moment, but I was like, damn, like he can run all the routes. He's shifty at the line. Like his releases are really nice. He's the hands are, we all know the hands are great and the physicality, but I actually came away more impressed with him as a route runner than, I don't know, maybe I thought or people think.
Yeah, the comp for him, he's got one of my favorite comps like that I've in the entire draft is Jason Witten. And just in terms of like, he gets it. Like he gets route running, how to create separation. And he's almost like better when he's able to go be neck and neck with a guy at the top of his route, because then he just leans his shoulder and you're done. But it's over. Kind of gets in. Exactly. Like there's the play against USC, the one catch that hopefully probably everyone's seen by now, but where he like turns his body to hit the defender with his body and then catch it in midair. That's just like, you can't coach a guy to do things like that. Like the things that are difficult to really drill in to a receiver, be like, hey, do these things. He does already. So I think that's why it's just maybe we're overthinking a little, questioning his speed when everything else is all there.
I mean, he's just going to live in the seams. And if the ball is thrown within gigantic radius of him, he's catching it. And then he's probably picking up 2 yards after the catch. That's how I feel. Like it's just, it's funny because like you talked about him being a short, or as close as it gets to like a sure thing. Tight end is a position people know usually you don't immediately produce at the NFL level, but like, man, it's hard to not imagine him coming in and, I guess it depends a little bit on the offense, but just being immediately productive because he is such a complete player. They used him so many different ways. He was the focal point of defenses and it didn't matter. And I guess I'll be curious to see what the 40 time is, to your point, because that does seem to be the one thing that could potentially bring him down a little bit. But if it's anywhere close to normal, this feels like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah. Plus he looks like a character or a creative player from NCAA 14. Like he's got like the perfect, fake face almost like. It's amazing. His
headshot, when you see it, you're like, oh, it really does look like
it's got the meathead football player look. It's great.
No, he's great. He's he's my favorite player to like give teams like Green Bay or Tennessee or whatever, just like it's so easy to imagine him on good offenses being like that piece that they need. I will say, man, this is another one where it was like I have fallen in love with Dalton Kincaid. Like it seems like all of draft Twitter at the same time, like erupted and we're like, oh my God. I mean, this guy, I'd say the USC game, but just digging into it, holy guy's good. So, and that, I mean, what are you hearing before we get to the last player? Like so we're not going to get into a full blown discussion, but he's injured, which is a big deal. And he's small for a tight end. What are you hearing around him right now?
I think people are, I guess like small matters for blocking purposes. It's like the main obviously concern. And on tape, he gets after it. I mean, he's never going to look like Michael Mayer because he's 20 pounds lighter, but he gets after it to where it's all about just like having defenses respect the threat. And I think he's blocks well enough to respect the threat. And then after that point, it's like, this dude's a wide receiver. If you just put him at the wide receivers, compared him to them, he's right there in that mix. And that's that's usually what it should take to go that high. Because it kind of what I've just said is like, to produce, you better look like a wide receiver. And Dalton Kincaid, the ball skills, the route running, like the athleticism, he just looks like a receiver plus 20 pounds.
Yeah. Darnell Washington out of Georgia will be the interesting one at the combine because there's all these whispers of him, how fast he's going to run. He is gigantic. He does not look like a wide receiver, however. So
looks like an OT. Looks like a left tackle.
He really does. Okay, well, that's a good transition to our final guy, who is okay. Maybe going to be the tallest. I mean, what's the history right now? Give me the context for our
He's going to
friend
have
from
the
Ohio State.
biggest wingspan in the history of the combine. I'm pretty sure he's going to. So at the Senior Bowl, he had.
I didn't say his name. Sorry, it's Dewand, right? Dewand Jones.
Dewand
is how you
Jones.
say his name?
Yes.
Dewand Jones at Ohio State. Okay.
So yeah, the right tackle for Ohio State. He had over 89-inch wingspan, so 7'5" wingspan. He had 11 and I believe a half-inch hands, which I think was going to tie the record for largest hands. I think 36 and like 3/8 inch arms, 375 pounds, 6'9". And the dude like blocks. The dude knows how to play tackle. And now he might test like Orlando Brown did. Like I don't. It's just hard at that size. Like it's a different. You're kind of playing a different game, but he uses his hands really well. He's one of my. Sometimes so at PFF we have the ability to like only watch the guy's highest graded plays. Or like just sort by like best plays, worst plays, and just like go through and watch the all 22 on them. And sometimes I'll get just like a little high at night and start flipping on the best plays, and I'll have like a few guys, and he's one of them that like is one of my favorites to watch just because it's so absurd. Like I just will crack up laughing at what this guy is able to do at that size. So I'm just like, I'm kind of just in awe of the guy. And if he tests like anywhere near an average offensive tackle, I think he could be a first rounder. Like just because of the one thing that like really sold me, and this is going to sound dumb, and a lot of things in scouting like sound dumb when you say them out loud, but when he was on the sideline at the Senior Bowl, because he played one day and then he was on the sideline, he's calling out the moves that the defensive ends were going to do to the other tackles, and he was getting it right. He's like inside move.
Wow.
And then the guys, and so he was like, so that to me is like, that's like student of the game. That's stuff that, yeah, maybe it sounds a little hokey, a little like, so what? But that, especially on the offensive line, having that, sense ability is pretty important.
I just looked up Giannis wingspan. Now I'm like, where does that compare to like NBA players? Let's see.
I think Giannis has like 13-inch hands, right?
Yeah, that's
so
probably.
He's in a different planet.
Giannis, it looks like it's close. No, it's about the same. It's almost the same. Wow. That's crazy. Provided I did my inches to feet conversion right. Okay. A lot of thoughts about Dewand Jones. I'd love to see Calijah Kancey versus Dewand Jones because just get under him. And guys do get under him. I do want to say that because of his size. That is something that happens. I haven't quite decided where I fall on both him and Johnson at Ohio State. I've been because it's just watching a lot of CJ Stroud, trying to kind of pay attention to them as well, but I haven't like really zeroed in on them individually. It's fascinating. You mentioned Orlando Brown. I think that's in the same way that Josh Allen is a name we're going to hear a million times with Anthony Richardson. I think Orlando Brown is the one that we will hear often associated with Jones because he's the only human who is similar to him. So for those who have forgotten, Orlando Brown famously had one of, if not the worst combine performances in NFL history and turned out to be fine. He's a good NFL player. So do you think that like that has changed perceptions about maybe combine performance with these offensive tackles, in particular, like a supersized tackle like Jones?
I think the latter. Like it's kind of, there's kind of like a spectrum of, when you're undersized, the testing better be up here. It better be at the top of the echelon. This, as far as when the size goes down, the testing doesn't necessarily have to, or when the size goes up, when you get bigger, this testing doesn't necessarily have to match. So you can get by to a degree with not being as fleet of foot. And you have to kind of know how to get by though. Like Orlando Brown, he didn't lose in college. Like that was why he was a first rounder pretty much every mock draft you saw until that combine. And so it was just people, and a lot of that was like people were questioning because he didn't prepare for the combine was the other thing. He came out and said that himself, which was like, oh, the guy's not even going to prepare for the combine. There's a little worrisome.
That's worse than being bad at it's like failing the marijuana test. Like nobody cares if you smoke marijuana, but that you were like, you didn't pay attention to the test. And, like that. Yeah.
But you can get by at his size if you know how to work around kind of the athletic deficiencies and kind of what I spoke to about that at Senior Bowl. Like he's very good at that. He knows I need to get my hands on guys right away. I'm not just going to go try to find them out in space. I need to reduce that space as quickly as possible. And he's very good at it. And he didn't lose a lot on tape at Ohio State. When he does lose, it's kind of ugly. Like he'll have some reps where he just like is a toppling mess. But the high end reps are awesome. And he's going to give you just this massive pocket more often than not, that a lot of, play callers will take that trade-off of this huge pocket versus maybe some real ugly losses that, get your quarterback in trouble, but you're going to have these, this ability to step up into windows more often than not.
Brown, I mean, he was bad at a lot of things. One of them was like he benched, like it was very bad, right? If I remember. Is it hard? Stupid question. I don't lift weights. It must be hard when you have really long arms to lift weights, right?
Yeah, there's like that's just a very direct correlation between bench press and arm.
Okay.
There you go. Numbers.
That's the long way to go.
You did 14 reps on the bench. 14 reps on the bench.
Guys like don't bench anymore, right? Like they just don't do it, right?
It's not like optimal for like chest muscle stimulation, right? It's like not the optimal exercise. So a lot of guys in weight rooms aren't putting up a bar. They're using dumbbells or cables or whatnot.
Well, Dewand Jones, I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see him just walking around, to be candid, like in street clothes, like Falele last year. I was constantly looking for.
I will be curious. Jones wore exclusively sunglasses when he wasn't on the field. If he rocks sunglasses at the podium, I think we can lock in the first round grade right now. I think we can put him there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving me these names. They were super fun to watch. And I'm super excited to see how they all do. Give you guys, some listeners, some names to pay attention to this week. Mike, where can our Mina Kimes Show listeners check you out?
You can follow me on Twitter at PFF_Mike and go get a PFF draft guide if you are a draft fan, even if you're not. You probably should only do it if you are a draft fan, but 100 players are in it right now, 150 coming after the combine, and 250 by draft day. All the PFF stats. It's a cool resource. I'm biased because I make it, but it's a cool resource.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mina.